It was October 21st, 1978. The sky above Melbourne stretched wide and endless, the Australian spring air heavy with the scent of salt from the nearby sea. At Moorabbin Airport, a young man prepared his small aircraft for a flight that should have been routine. His name was Frederick Valentich. He was 20 years old with a boyish face, a calm voice, and a dream of one day flying commercial jets. To him, this flight was nothing unusual, just a trip across the Bass Strait, the dangerous stretch of water that separated mainland Australia from Tasmania. He checked his instruments carefully, adjusting knobs, flipping switches, his hands moving with practiced precision. The Cessna 182, a single-engine light aircraft, gleamed in the fading sun. Valentich had planned a short flight to King Island. The weather forecast was good. Fuel tanks were full. Nothing should have gone wrong. Yet the Bass Strait had a reputation. Sailors called it a graveyard. Ships had vanished in its waters. Aircraft disappeared in its skies. Locals whispered of lights seen over the sea, strange glows that danced on the horizon. Valentich knew the legends. He was fascinated by them. He believed in UFOs, but that evening, he was just a pilot on a simple flight plan. As the clock neared 6:19 p.m., Valentich lifted his plane off the runway, wheels leaving the earth behind. The Cessna climbed smoothly, its engine humming in steady rhythm. Below, the coastline fell away, replaced by the dark, restless waters of the Bass Strait. Valentich's voice came calmly over the radio to Melbourne Air Traffic Control, announcing his course. For a time, everything seemed ordinary. Then, the first trace of unease entered his voice. At 7:06 p.m., Valentich radioed in. He had encountered another aircraft, he said. It was flying above him. Controllers checked their radar screens. No other aircraft appeared. "Could you describe the aircraft?" they asked. Valentich hesitated. "It is not an aircraft," he replied. His words hung heavy in the static. He described a long, shiny object, metallic, with a green light that moved strangely, faster than any plane should. It seemed to hover above him, watching, circling. Valentich's tone grew tense. "It is playing with me," he said, his voice a mixture of awe and fear. He reported that the object passed over him at high speed, then stopped, then darted away again. It made maneuvers no known aircraft could perform. In the control tower, confusion spread. Controllers exchanged looks, unsure if the young pilot was panicking or witnessing something beyond explanation. They asked him to clarify, to remain calm. Valentich tried, but his voice betrayed him. "It is not a conventional aircraft," he repeated. The minutes dragged. The strange object continued to toy with him, darting above, alongside, disappearing and reappearing. The Cessna flew on into the darkening sky, its pilot a lone voice on the radio, describing an encounter no one could see. At 7:12, Valentich sounded more distressed. "It is orbiting above me," he said. "It has a green light. It is shining all over me." Static crackled. Controllers strained to hear. Valentich's breathing grew heavier, the strain evident in each word. He asked if military aircraft were in the area. None were reported. He asked if experimental planes were flying. None were. He was alone. Or so it should have been. At 7:17 p.m., Valentich reported engine trouble. "It is rough idling," he said, panic now creeping into his voice. He was still describing the object when his final words came. "It is not an aircraft. It is..." The transmission ended in a burst of metallic scraping, a sound like twisting metal echoing across the radio waves. Then silence. Controllers called his name again and again. There was no reply. On the radar, no blip. In the sky, no plane. In the waters below, no wreckage. Frederick Valentich and his Cessna had vanished. The controllers stared at their screens, stunned. They had heard his voice, his fear, his final words. Yet when search and rescue combed the waters of the Bass Strait through the night and into the following days, they found nothing. No debris, no oil slick, no body. It was as if plane and pilot had been erased, but his radio transmission remained, a chilling testimony, preserved on tape. A young man describing something impossible in the skies above him. Something that should not exist. Something that played with him. And then, silence. When Valentich's transmission went silent, the controllers at Melbourne Air Traffic Control were left frozen in disbelief. They had listened to every word, every tremor of fear in his voice. The last sound, metallic scraping like twisting steel, still echoed in their headphones. Within minutes, alarms were raised. Search and rescue teams were dispatched to the Bass Strait. Helicopters swept low over the black waves, searchlights piercing the night. Naval vessels moved into position, their crews scanning the horizon for any trace of wreckage. But the ocean remained empty, vast, and indifferent. The next morning, daylight revealed only more emptiness. No oil slick, no fragments of aluminum, no life vests, no body. Over the next 7 days, aircraft and ships combed more than 20,000 square kilometers of ocean. Experienced pilots flew grid patterns, methodically scanning the waters. Divers searched shallower coastal areas. Nothing. The Cessna had simply disappeared. The media seized the story. Headlines screamed of a vanished pilot, of a UFO encounter in the skies of Australia. Reporters swarmed Moorabbin Airport, interviewing fellow pilots who confirmed Valentich was serious, professional, and fascinated by unexplained aerial phenomena. Some dismissed him as a dreamer. Others insisted he was level-headed and would never invent such a story. The Australian Department of Transport launched an investigation. Their final report was clinical, filled with technical language, but it could not hide the central truth. No trace of Frederick Valentich or his aircraft was ever found. Investigators proposed theories. One was disorientation. Perhaps Valentich had become confused, flying upside down without realizing, mistaking the reflection of his own plane's lights in the water for another object. But this was weak. His Cessna had fixed landing lights, and Valentich was trained in night flying. Another theory. He became disoriented and crashed into the sea. But then where was the wreckage? Light aircraft rarely vanish completely. Debris floats. Fuel leaves slicks. In Valentich's case, there was nothing. Skeptics suggested he had staged his own disappearance, that he wanted to escape his life, to vanish into obscurity. But Valentich had a girlfriend, a family, and ambitions of becoming a commercial airline pilot. He left no note, no reason to abandon everything. And if he had planned it, why radio such a bizarre story? Why describe a UFO? The theories grew stranger. Some believed he was intercepted by a secret military aircraft, some experimental craft never disclosed to the public. Others whispered of something more unearthly. Valentich's father openly stated his belief that his son had been taken by extraterrestrials. He argued that Frederick was fascinated by UFOs because he believed they were real. Now perhaps he had paid the price for seeking the truth. Witnesses came forward. Dozens of people across southern Australia reported seeing strange lights in the sky that night. A group of campers near Cape Otway claimed they saw a green light moving erratically above the ocean in the same direction Valentich had flown. Others reported an object hovering silently, then vanishing at great speed. These reports could not be ignored, but they could not be confirmed. The Bass Strait itself had a reputation, long before Frederick Valentich. Known as the graveyard of ships, its waters had swallowed countless vessels. Even planes had disappeared, their wreckage never found. Some locals believed the strait was cursed. Others spoke of magnetic anomalies, forces that twisted compasses and drew travelers off course. Now, with Valentich's disappearance, those old legends stirred again. The inquiry ended with no answers. Officially, the disappearance was presumed fatal, likely due to disorientation or engine failure, but unofficially the story was already something else. A pilot had reported a UFO. He had described it in detail: shiny, metallic, circling above him, shining with green light. He had said it was not an aircraft. Then he was gone. For skeptics, it was a case of a young man frightened and confused. For believers, it was the smoking gun, a real-time alien abduction, recorded live over radio waves. And for Valentich's family, it was a wound that never healed. Their son, their brother, had vanished into the sky, leaving only his voice behind. His last words still haunt those who hear them. It is not an aircraft, it is... And then silence. As the days passed, and the sea gave up no trace of Frederick Valentich or his plane, another layer of mystery began to unfold. Reports poured in from across southern Australia. People claimed they had seen something strange that night. Strange lights in the sky, hovering above the Bass Strait. A plumber driving along the Great Ocean Road said he noticed a green light darting across the horizon, stopping suddenly in mid-air before vanishing. A farmer in Tasmania swore he saw a cigar-shaped object glowing faintly as it moved silently above the water. A group of campers near Cape Otway claimed they witnessed a large, luminous object hovering for nearly a minute before shooting upward and disappearing into the clouds. All of these reports coincided with the time and location of Valentich's disappearance. Investigators dismissed them as unreliable, but for the public, the connection was impossible to ignore. Valentich had described a shiny metallic craft with a green light. Dozens of witnesses claimed they saw the same. Was it coincidence or confirmation? Newspapers began to speculate openly. Was the young pilot abducted by a UFO? Had his Cessna been captured, pulled into a beam of light, carried away into the sky? The thought was terrifying, but it spread like fire. And then there was the tape. Valentich's final transmission. Investigators played it again and again. His calm at the beginning, his mounting fear, his insistence, it is not an aircraft. And finally, the metallic scraping sound, the last thing anyone heard before silence. Audio experts studied it. Some said it sounded like interference, distorted radio static. Others swore it was something else, something mechanical, otherworldly. For skeptics, alternative explanations were simpler. Valentich had been an inexperienced pilot with only about 150 flying hours. He could have become disoriented. Perhaps he was flying upside down, mistaking the reflection of his own plane's lights in the water for a UFO. But this theory crumbled under scrutiny. The Cessna's lights were fixed. Valentich was trained in night navigation. And even if he had crashed into the sea, why was there no wreckage, no debris, no oil slick? Light aircraft do not vanish completely. and yet Valentich's did. Other theories emerged. Some claimed he had faked his disappearance, staged the UFO encounter as an elaborate cover to escape his life. But Valentich had no debts, no scandals, no motive. His family rejected the idea completely. They believed his story. His father insisted his son had been taken by extraterrestrials, a victim of an abduction that left only his voice as evidence. In the years that followed, the story of Frederick Valentich became legend. Believers pointed to it as proof that UFOs were real, that they could interact with us, even take us. Skeptics dismissed it as confusion and bad luck, but the facts remained unchanged. Pilot vanished. A plane vanished. And his final words described something impossible in the sky above him. Something that played with him. Something that was not an aircraft. In the years after Frederick Valentich vanished, his story refused to fade. The official inquiry ended with no answers, only speculation. The ocean had swallowed its secret, but the tape of his final words remained. A haunting record of a man describing something impossible. "It is not an aircraft," he had said, again and again. That phrase echoed across Australia, across the world, becoming part of UFO history. To skeptics, Valentich was a tragic figure, a young pilot, undertrained and unlucky, who became disoriented and crashed into the Bass Strait. They argued that his fascination with UFOs colored his perception, that in a moment of fear and confusion, he believed he saw something extraordinary, when in fact it was ordinary. But no ordinary explanation accounted for the missing wreckage. No ordinary explanation accounted for the metallic scraping at the end of the tape. And no ordinary explanation silenced the dozens of witnesses who swore they saw strange lights in the sky that night. For believers, Valentich's story was different. It was not failure. It was not error. It was evidence. Evidence that we are not alone. Evidence that contact had already happened. Not in distant deserts or hidden bases, but in the open sky above the ocean, with a young man caught in the middle. Researchers pored over the case for decades. Theorists linked his disappearance to other vanishings in the Bass Strait, calling it Australia's own Bermuda Triangle. They studied weather reports, magnetic anomalies, even secret military projects, but the UFO theory remained the most chilling. Valentich's father never doubted it. He told reporters that his son had been taken by extraterrestrials, and that one day, perhaps, he would return. His family never stopped hoping, though the years turned to decades and the silence grew heavier. Today, the Valentich disappearance remains one of the most famous UFO cases in the world. It is a story told in documentaries, whispered in late-night radio shows, dissected in UFO research circles. A story of a young man who took to the skies and never returned. A story of lights in the night, of voices cut short, of mysteries that will not die. And it leaves us with one unsettling truth. If Valentich was taken, if his Cessna was erased from the ocean without a trace, then the skies are not as empty as we like to believe. They are alive, watching, waiting. His story is a warning carved into silence, a reminder that not all who vanish are lost to storms or mistakes. Some may be claimed by something far stranger, something that circles above us, unseen, until it chooses to be seen. Frederick Valentich's name lives on, not just as a pilot who vanished, but as a symbol of the unknown. A voice carried through static, across time, repeating even now. It is not an aircraft. And then silence.